Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. If you've been anywhere near the self-publishing space lately, you've probably seen this tool making absolute waves. The Dragon Romantasy Book Builder GPT. It literally promises to take a single one-sentence idea and spin it into a highly structured, 30-chapter novel blueprint. Oh, and it even drafts the first chapter for you. Sounds a bit like magic, right? Well, today we're putting it under the microscope. We're going to look at the engineering behind the software, and more importantly, the real-world data, to see what this thing actually delivers.
We've got a pretty clear roadmap for this explainer today. We're going to start by breaking down the 5-job writing trap, check out the tool's bond-to-book solution, and see exactly what it outputs. Then we'll pull back the curtain on the true costs, including our reality check on ChatGPT itself, before handing down our final verdict.
Let's jump right into part 1, the 5-job writing trap.
So, why do so many incredible novel ideas just die on a blank page? Look, we have absolutely all been there. You get hit with a brilliant premise at 2 in the morning. You open a fresh document. You type Chapter 1, and then you just stare at that blinking cursor before closing the laptop. You have absolutely no idea what happens next. And honestly, it is not a lack of imagination. It's a structural bottleneck.
The creator of this tool calls this the 5-job writing trap, and it hits the nail right on the head. When you sit down at a blank page, your brain goes into complete decision overload because you are trying to do 5 massive jobs all at the exact same time. You're trying to build a fantasy world, flesh out 2 lead characters, pace a slow-burn romance, plant your secrets, and, oh yeah, actually write the prose. It's just way too much at once, and the story collapses under its own weight.
Which brings us to our second section, the bond-to-book solution.
The way this tool tackles that bottleneck is actually fascinating, mainly because of how shockingly simple the input is. You literally just start with one short premise. Something like, a disgraced princess discovers the last wild dragon is bonded to the enemy commander she has to assassinate. That's it. From there, the GPT steps in like a developmental editor. It starts asking you framing questions about tropes and character emotional wounds, locking in those core fundamental decisions long before it ever tries to write a single word.
And this is where it gets really interesting. It takes those decisions and sequentially builds out a 4-part, 30-chapter plot architecture. What's super cool here is the strict romance and revelation schedule. It maps out, physically, exactly when the attraction spikes, when the secrets are finally dropped, and when the big twists hit. This ensures you aren't blowing your big reveals too early or letting the plot completely stall out.
To put that into perspective, take a look at Chapter 16 here. By the time you reach this midpoint, the betrayal beat is already explicitly locked in. The AI isn't just taking random guesses. It's generating this specific conflict based entirely on the character's opposing scars, the ones you approved way back in Step 1. It completely eliminates that midnight panic of trying to invent drama out of thin air.
All right, moving on to Section 3, what you actually get. This is the exact transformation the vendor promises. You know those messy, scattered ideas you've scribbled in a notebook? It takes those and molds them into a totally cohesive, approved 30-chapter outline. And it culminates in a drafted Chapter 1 that, at least in the vendor's demo, came in at over 3,000 words. That is a pretty massive head start. If you go through the entire flow, you don't just get a basic outline. You walk away with 12 specific story assets spanning 4 connected systems. We're talking a world Bible, lore systems, character maps, a secret schedule, and that full 30-chapter blueprint. It really proves this tool is aiming to be a deeply structured design framework, not just some generic prompt generator. But now, let's get into Section 4, the true cost explained, because we definitely need to talk numbers. We really have to contrast the marketing hype with the reality here. The front-end pitch boasts a highly appealing entry price of just $12.95, but once you hit the other side of that checkout page, you are greeted with a full upsell funnel. That $12.95 gets your foot in the door for sure, but it is definitely not the ceiling.
Let's break this down. That $13 impulse spike can escalate incredibly fast if you go for the order bump and all 4 primary one-time offers, which, by the way, include tools for prose improvement, maintaining long-form AI memory, and series planning. Your total spend suddenly balloons to $420.90. An independent review confirmed these exact numbers straight from the affiliate dashboard. So yeah, it's quite a jump. There's also a pretty sketchy licensing ambiguity that you need to be aware of. One of those upsells, OTO 4, is a $197 commercial license. Now, the initial pitch implies you can use this to publish your own KDP book. But when this expensive commercial license suddenly pops up, buyers might panic and incorrectly assume they have to buy it just to hit publish on Amazon. In reality, that specific license is for agency client work, but the way it's presented is super confusing and definitely a trap to watch out for.
Next up, Section 5, the ChatGPT Reality Check.
Beyond the funnel costs, there is a massive hidden prerequisite. As one reviewer bluntly pointed out, if you try to run this complex 30-chapter intake flow on the ChatGPT free tier, it is virtually impossible. You are absolutely going to hit severe message limits and get slapped with model downgrades right in the middle of building your novel's lore. It's a recipe for immense frustration. So to actually build this novel smoothly without your session constantly crashing to a halt, you realistically have to have a ChatGPT Plus subscription. That's a separate $20 a month paid directly to OpenAI, which gives you a much larger cap, roughly 160 messages per 3-hour window. This is a pretty vital piece of information that the sales page conveniently glosses over.
Which brings us to our final section, the final verdict.
Before you dive in, you also need to understand the current market. Dragon Romantasy is huge. We all know the massive hits from the last couple of years. But trends are actually shifting. Readers right now are drifting more toward darker romance, femgore, and sci-fi. So planning out a massive 5-book Dragon series using this tool is a much riskier bet today than it was, say, 2 years ago.
So, what's the bottom line? Bringing it all together, this GPT is honestly a fantastic structural scaffold, especially for beginners who get paralyzed by decision fatigue. It is excellent for pacing out a romance. But you have to remember, it requires your own paid ChatGPT Plus plan. It carries a real risk of structural sameness if thousands of authors are using the exact same prompts, and the final prose is going to need heavy human editing to strip out that generic AI voice and comply with Amazon's strict AI disclosure rules.
At the end of the day, the software hands you a roadmap, your world building, and your first chapter. But it leaves us with one really provocative question. While an AI can perfectly scaffold your plot and completely cure your blank page syndrome, can it ever truly replace the sheer human perseverance and the unique, messy voice needed to actually sit down and finish those remaining 29 chapters? That's something to think about. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.